Maintain a career as a copper thief. The Criminal Matters Amendment Act came into effect today. It's created far harsher sentencing and bail conditions for people who damage infrastructure. Now, for more on the story, we are now joined in studio by Eskom spokesperson Khulu Phasiwe. Good evening, Khulu, and thank you so much for joining us. Now, first things first, this as one of the organizations that's been on the receiving end of copper theft, infrastructure theft, what does this mean for Eskom?
We are excited as a company. This law has been long time coming. It's long overdue. We are happy that it's now being implemented, because remember, between ourselves as Eskom, we are losing about 2 billion rand a year due to cable theft and especially copper theft. Municipalities also are losing about another 2 billion rand. So if you put Eskom, municipalities and Transnet and Telkom, all of us together, the economy is losing about 7 billion rand a year because of this scourge of cable theft. We are happy that this law is coming into effect, and one of the good news is that it's also clamping down on scrap metal dealers. They are saying if you are found to have bought some of these cables from some of the people who are selling them, you face a penalty of about 100 million rand. We are happy with this new development.
Now, the Act is also targeting corporate bodies that are guilty of involvement. How rife is this in terms of corporate involvement, the practice where even companies are involved in theft of state infrastructure? And what happens now, because now we speak of corporates, it's not an individual, it's an organization. What's the way going forward with regards to that?
Well, one of the biggest targets they are looking at basically are scrap metal dealers. The law is saying that if someone brings a cable into your facility, you need to ask them as to where they got it from and whether they have proof. If they don't have proof, you don't have to buy it. If you do buy it, that's when you face that penalty of 100 million rand.
When you talk of proof, what sort of proof are you talking? Is this a receipt, an invoice? How does this work?
Well, for example, if for whatever reason a company like Eskom, we no longer are using some of those cables, you can have some kind of a letter or whatever coming from Eskom saying these are old things that we're no longer using, and then you can use that as a proof if you really want to go and sell this scrap. But generally what we have seen over the years is that people actually steal our cables. Like today, for example, or at least over the last 9 months, we have not have load shedding, but in some places like in Soweto and elsewhere, we have had instances where people do not have electricity, mainly because of cable theft. So it is instances like that where we really want to make sure that this law comes into effect to make sure that we clamp down on people like that.
Eskom, as an organization, as a company, are you willing to give people those letters or proof to say that we're no longer using these products, we don't need them, and you're welcome to take them? Are people going to be buying these from you, or is it going to be just give and take? Anyone can pick up scrap metal and sell it to scrap metal companies?
From our side, currently we are actually in need of these copper cables, because we want to make sure that we strengthen our networks and distribution points. So we are actually not selling them at this moment. So, but if it does happen that maybe there's a cut off or a small piece that we are no longer using it, it's in those circumstances that we might be able to give a letter to whoever. But generally, we are not in the business of selling these things, and therefore, anyone who has them has to have proof as to where they got it from.
Now, Khulu, just speaking of load shedding, today is the 1st of June. I think everyone has been very excited of the fact that we haven't had any load shedding or any problems, apart from the regular maintenance dates that have been set by Eskom to say, and with people, citizens being informed that there will be some sort of maintenance taking place. No load shedding. It's the 1st of June. The cold is setting in. Winter is here. Should we expect any changes going forward, or is this set? Will there be no load shedding for the rest of the season?
Well, our aspiration as a company is not to have load shedding at all during the winter and also in the forthcoming months beyond winter. So in other words, if everything stays as it is now, we're not going to have load shedding at all. And today, being the 1st of June, currently we are sitting at about 38,000 megawatts that we are able to produce. The demand currently, as I speak to you, is sitting at around 33,000 megawatts. So we have a nice cushion of about 5,000 megawatts megawatts, which is sitting right somewhere there, just waiting for any eventuality in case we have a huge demand. But also some of it we are selling to our neighbors in Zimbabwe and Namibia and places like that. Whenever they need any extra capacity, we're able to assist them.
Now, with that wage negotiations currently taking place with Eskom and Labour, there seems to be a deadlock. Could there be a labour dispute going forward? Are we likely to see any dispute that could disrupt the supply of electricity to citizens?
Well, hopefully we're not going to get there, but it has to be understood that we're still in the early stages of our negotiations. This is the second week now of our negotiations. From our side as a company, we are willing to continue to negotiate until we find each other in terms of finalizing the matter. But we have not had any indication from the unions that they're going to go on strike, because they are prepared to negotiate. So we are hopeful that before the end of this month, we should be able to make an announcement as to what the meeting point is.
Now, Khulu, before I let you go, in terms of everything that's taking place, the act that has come into place, you mentioned that it has been a long time coming. You have been working for this to happen, and finally it's here. What's the reception been like for Eskom? Yes, very happy. Together with the other entities, Telkom, you mentioned, Transnet. What's the discussion between all these government entities?
Well, from our side as the state-owned enterprises, together with the South African police and also the business side or the business chamber as a whole, we will continue to cooperate and make sure that we do as much as possible in terms of maybe assisting the police whenever we can. But the most important thing also is to note that the courts, even before this law came into effect, the courts were also beginning to send very strong messages. Like in Kroonstad, for example, in February this year, the Circuit Court in Kroonstad sentenced 5 people who have been found with cable. They sentenced them to 140 years altogether, the 5 of them. But the ringleader of that group was sentenced up to 43 years in jail. So we are happy that the courts themselves, including this new law now, are sending a very strong message that stealing electricity cables is actually almost equivalent to economic sabotage.
Now, just speaking of heavy sentences and the courts also coming on board, police working hard to ensure that these people, the thieves, are sort of put behind bars and the message is sent across. What sort of, in terms of safety issues, Cable theft is a very dangerous thing. If you pick up a cable and you find that it's live and somebody unfortunately is in an accident, what sort of measures is Eskom putting in place with regards to places that might be open to that sort of issue? There was an incident, I think, in Limpopo a few weeks ago where a child lost her life after touching a live cable, I think.
Well, we have what we call Operation Kanyisa. We go around the country essentially educating people about the importance of making sure that they report cases where you have low-hanging wires. It could be because of maybe just the old age of the wire. Sometimes obviously changes in the weather pattern. Sometimes some of our poles or the transmission lines, sometimes they maybe fall because of different things that are happening. But also, most importantly, people who are trying to steal our cables. We actually encourage people to report the matters whenever they are aware of them. But we go to schools where we are encouraging and teaching young kids as to how to report or basically to handle some of the cables when they see them. The most important thing obviously is not to touch it. If it's lying low, is to report the matter to Eskom or the municipality so that we can come and remove those wires which can pose a threat to the communities.
Khulu, we have to leave it there for now. Thank you so much for joining us, and we do look forward to a very warm, electrified winter this season.